Good morning and welcome to our Brownback session. We'd like to thank you for joining us today. This lecture is being live broadcast on the GSE's YouTube channel. The recording will also be archived and accessible there later this afternoon. So while the camera and microphone are oriented to the front of the room, please note that any audience contributions or questions may be captured on the broadcast and the recording. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce our speaker today, Professor Rina Zazkis from Simon Fraser University. I've really been a fan of her work for a long time, and Rina did her education in Israel. I think her undergraduate degree in math was from Haifa, and then she went on to study mathematics education, and I think her doctorate was from the Netherlands. Is that correct? And the work is really very mixed. You're going to hear today about how it relates to teachers, but I know that Rina's done a lot of work in number theory and many publications and book chapters and presentations in this area. But more recently, her focus has been on the mathematics that teachers need to know, that mathematical understandings that they need. And I'm going to let her talk about it and welcome her to the Brownback. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for having me here. And as far as the agenda was explained to me, that no brown bags, and I told you it. So bon appetit, everybody. And Simon Fraser University is in Vancouver, beautiful British Columbia, where it is not as cold as here. Even though some people hear Canada, they think that Canada is cold, but Canada is not. The west coast of Canada is not as cold as here. Anyway, so let's start. Real thing is teaching in the classroom with students. So how can you imagine what you are going to do before you actually have to do this? One of the ideas in preparing for the real thing is role playing. So you are getting ready for an interview. Let's have a mock interview. I'll act as an interviewer and ask you questions, and you will pretend that you are responding to a real interviewer, or we are mimicking a real court appearance. So role playing, once again, is very often used in the preparation for a real thing, whatever real thing is going to be. There are a few definitions of role playing. I will read the second one. You can read the first one. Role playing is an as-if experiment in which the subjects are asked to behave as if he or she were a particular person in a particular situation. So one idea in preparing for real teaching is let's play roles. You will be a teacher, I will act as a student, and we will see how you behave and how you react to several situations. And many people mentioned in literature advantages of role playing. Several advantages are mentioned here. Increased interest, increased involvement of students, developing empathy, understanding various perspectives, deeper engagement with content, and increased retention. Once again, those are usually mentioned in literature as advantages of learning through role play. But there are also very considerable disadvantages. Suppose I want to enact role playing in my class of prospective teachers. There is only one teacher, one person can play the role of the teacher. And there are time and participation logistics that prevent participation of everybody. So what do? I want as many people as possible to imagine what they are going to do in certain situations. So the question is how to give all students, and by students I mean prospective teachers, an opportunity to participate, because prospective teachers are my students. And the answer is imagined role-playing or script writing. So rather than enact role-playing, I call it imagined role-playing, when you have to put as a play on paper. Teacher says, student says, another student responds, teacher responds, and so on. You have to put a play on paper, not paper, on the computer, whatever. Write down the play as if you were role playing. So this is to assure participation of many people, or many people playing various roles. So script writing. Many good people before me have used script writing, imaginary conversations to present their ideas. So I'll mention just a few. Socrates, Galileo. More recently, related to mathematics education, Lakatos, in his famous book, Proofs and Refutations, presented how mathematical ideas and proofs are developed as an imaginary dialogue between students and teachers. And many others. And here we come. So I created with colleagues an idea that I call lesson play. Play, not plan. Lesson play. And which we refer to as presenting a lesson in the form of a script for conversation between a teacher and her student. And because we had lots of data that would be exactly the same theoretical framework and exactly the same conclusion, just different plays on different mathematical topics, we put it together as a book rather than several articles that have very similar beginning and end. So, lesson plan, actually the idea of a lesson play developed as my personal dissatisfaction of lesson plan. What is lesson plan? Anybody in teacher education taking education courses learns to create lessons. What are they good for? I'm not sure. I believe that nobody in real teaching uses lesson plan as we are told, as we are learned during our teacher education time. Just to put objectives, student activities, teacher activities, and so on in some table. Yes, everybody does it, and maybe it is a good learning experience. And what is the important thing, that there is a tradition of lesson learning. So I will play a short script. I hope it works.
Oh, I brought my lesson plans. I'd love it if you look them over. And these are the classes you will start with. Freshman English.
I would like you to hear, I put the volume up. Please try to hear the very first sentence.
Thank you. Oh, I brought my lesson plans. I'd love it if you look them over. And these are the classes you will start with. Freshman English. 4 classes, about 150 students enrolled. Some of them are just out of juvenile hall. 1 or 2 might be wearing anklet cuffs to monitor their whereabouts. And you see here, you'll have to revise your lesson plans. If you look at their scores, these vocabulary lessons, some of these the books, Homer's The Odyssey.
Okay, so you smiled when you saw the list of students and what the students are about, but I would like to draw your attention to something different. A new teacher comes to school. She brings with her lesson plans. And the principal or inspector or whatever admits her for teaching says you have to revise your lesson plans. So this is the popular media. It is what teaching is about. It is making lesson plans. So there is a tradition. Let's go back to my presentation. So lesson plan, once again, there is a tradition. There are expectations. Students come to teacher education program, they want to make many lesson plans and then use those plans in their classroom. There is an idea, they learn how to fill things into the templates, but once again, real teachers do not plan like this. And lesson plan is not so bad as I make it sound, because there are many good things that you will find in a good lesson plan. Like you will see how students engage in an activity. Some maybe use manipulatives. In a good lesson plan, the objectives are well clarified, and there could be clear organization. There could be opportunity for students to share their ideas. There could be well-defined evaluation process. There could be opportunity to extension. So all these good things are found in a lesson plan. But there are also things that cannot be found in the lesson plan. And it is not because lesson plan is good or bad. It is because the format is not allowing for example, anticipating student difficulties, students' errors, student misconceptions, anticipating how students are guided to overcome those misconceptions if those appear. Especially what is not found in a lesson plan is what language is used and how students' language, if it is inappropriate, is corrected by a teacher, how students supported pedagogically or emotionally, and what particular questions are used to access, extend, or refine students' understanding. So all this, once again, is not found in a lesson plan, even if it is a good lesson plan, just because the format doesn't allow this. One more, how different forms of reasoning are. So that's why there's an idea of a lesson plan where all those things, especially the language that the teacher will use, can be found. So, lesson plan. Towards the end of my talk, I will discuss the affordances of lesson plans for prospective teachers, what they learn when they engage in creating lesson plans, the affordances for teacher educators when I work with prospective teachers and I see their lesson plans, what can I do in the classroom, how can I address what they wrote, what they were thinking about. And for researchers, as a researcher, what can I learn from attending to a lesson play that a prospective teacher wrote. So I will show the affordances for these three different populations, even though for many of us, B and C are the same people, teacher educators and researchers. So, how all this started? All this started, once again, with my personal dissatisfaction with the idea of lesson. Students came to our methods courses, and they expected to write lesson plans, and they expected to share lesson plans. And after a few years, I found them very boring. And also, as the technology develops, you can download tons of those, and I got tired of searching who downloaded what from where and who created it by himself or herself. So all this idea of lesson plans didn't serve the purpose for me of preparing people for their classroom experiences. So I say, okay, don't write lesson plans. Write a play. Write a play in which you imagine interaction. So in the beginning, just there was the instruction, write a play. The plays that I received back were very boring once again. It was teacher's answer, teacher's question, student answer. Then teacher's praise. Teacher's question, student answer, and usually some praise. So I changed the assignment. I say, write a, that should be play. I changed it this morning. Write a play that addresses some problem. But what I found out that the problems and students' misconceptions, prospective teachers have very limited repertoire of those. So once again, the task changed. We developed a set of prompts in which we present a problematic issue, a student incorrect answer, or maybe some incorrect justification for a correct answer. And we said, okay, this is the beginning of the play, and we asked people to develop the play from this given interaction. Later on, we also asked them to write what happened before they described part of a play, the described incident in the play. So this is an example, length measurement problem. Students in your class were asked to measure the length of different objects, and the teacher collected their responses, and then the following conversation. The teacher asked Johnny, how long is the stick that you measured? And Johnny says it is 7 centimeters, and can you show me how you measured? And Johnny places the stick next to the ruler as shown below. And you see here the stick is placed next to the ruler. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So Johnny claims that the length of the segment is 7 centimeters. How would you continue from here? So I will show you a couple of responses. Once again, people wrote a couple of pages, and I will show here a couple of lines. So it is very, very incomplete presentation of lesson plays wrote by prospective teachers, but it gives some idea, and I also chose an excerpt that I would like to call your attention to something. So, teacher, I see you started there because this is the first number that you saw. So here the teacher suggests what was in student's mind. She doesn't ask, or he doesn't ask the student. And yes, we always start with 1. Here Johnny confirms the teacher's diagnosis. But yes, usually when we are counting, we do start with 1. But guess what? When we are measuring, there is a special trick that we do. So here we learn not only about this teacher's approaches to teaching measurement, but also this person's perception about mathematics. There is some very, very special tricks. Now, something like that we cannot see in a very good lesson plan. But here we can learn a lot about what this prospective teacher thinks about teaching in general, teaching particular subject, and relationship with mathematics in particular. And what the suggestion is to mark 0 on the ruler, so it will remind you where to start. Okay, another example. Once again, if in the previous one we saw tricks, here we see reference to rules. So what is mathematics? Mathematics is a set of rules and a set of tricks. That's what I can learn here. And once again, there are 2 important rules for measuring. And once again, Johnny cannot remember all the rules, but don't skip. Spaces is an important rule. And second rule, we start at the base, and the base is 0. But here is another one that is rather interesting, I find. And here is very different approach. And the teacher suggests if you place the stick upright and the ruler upright on the table, will it be the same? Of course, Johnny thinks it will be the same, and then he tries, and the stick all of a sudden has a different measure. And what happened here? Magic happened here, and the conversation continues, and here the teacher brings Johnny to understand that he was counting extra pieces. So it is very different approach to teaching rather than talking about rules and rather than talking about tricks. So then as a teacher educator, after my students, prospective teachers completed this task, I can bring several of those excerpts, of course, without revealing the name of who wrote what, and maybe sometimes bringing something that nobody wrote, just because I want to bring something for discussion. And I bring it to the class attention, and let's talk about these approaches, what is good, what can be even better, and so on. And once again, just because I don't say who wrote what, the idea is that everything came from the given classroom, which gives me an opportunity sometimes bring things that do not appear in the given classroom, but I know it appeared in a different classroom, maybe the previous year. But I bring things that I would like to bring for discussion. There is another prompt that we developed, a little bit more advanced mathematics. We have a graph, the pink one, you see pink? Purple is the graph of y equals x squared, and the teacher asked to draw x minus 3 squared, and the student said it moves 3 points left. It is very, very frequent mistake of students, people who have not dealt with parabolas for a long time, will just tell you that actually the graph moves to the right and not to the left. But once again, how it can be treated, it is just another example of a prompt that we work with secondary teachers. And once again, it is a rather frequent error and very logical one. But once again, it can be treated as a rule, or it can be developed in one way or in another. So, because the lesson play task appear to be more successful when it is based on a given prompt, we devoted quite a lot of time to prompt development. Some prompts turn to be better than others. Some prompts develop more interesting responses. Actually, it has to be interesting for us because then we have to read all those. And then sometimes we have to analyze all this file. So, prompt development. Let's look at a toy train prompt. A toy train has 100 cars. By the way, these colors I added only this morning because I was confused myself what was going on there. But the teachers were, the prospective teachers, the students were not given the colors. They were given only the description. The first color is red, second is blue, the third is yellow, fourth is red, fifth is blue, and sixth is yellow, and so on. What is the color of the 80th car? And the teacher is moving, and she sees in the work of one student the 80th car. Why is the 80th car red? And the answer is because the fourth card is red, and so 80 is a multiple of 4, and it is wrong. The fourth card is not red, and because there is a unit of repeat is 3, what will help here is to look at multiples of 3 and not multiples of 4. Okay, so this is an idea of a prompt. But after we discuss it and people understand that we have to look at multiples of 3, there are some unfortunate mistakes connected to multiples of 3 that let us develop this prompt. Here, the unit of repeat is 4. There are four different colors. And you can see red, blue, yellow, green. Red, blue, and so on. What is the color of the 39th car? So 39th car is indeed yellow. But the justification that is given here is incorrect. It is yellow because 39 is 1 less than 40. It is 1 less than a multiple of 4. And once again, the pattern here is pattern of multiples of 4. I know that for some people, when I say here is trivial, but I was warned that not everybody here is related to mathematical education, so please excuse me for maybe giving more elementary level explanation that's necessary. But anyway, so 39th car is indeed yellow, but it is not because the third car is yellow. It is not because we are working with a pattern of unit of repeat is 3. It is because 39 is 1 less than the closest multiple of 4. So this is quite different, and this is something that teachers have real difficulty to respond to when the answer is correct, but justification is totally incorrect. So actually we developed this prompt based on one student response, one prospective teacher response, that in a pattern like that, a student suggested that 15th car was yellow. And the same, because 15 was a multiple of 3. The same wrong justification. And 15 is indeed yellow, but because 15 it is 1 less than 16, and not because it is a multiple of 3. So with a prompt like that, people have, students, prospective teachers have much more difficulty because the answer is correct. Once again, we started with a prompt like that. Why 143 is a prime number? Some people said it is not in our timetables. Yes, you learn about timetables and usually, by the way, all those prompts are taken from research and real answers from real people. I am not that imaginative. Once upon a time, when I started doing my research, I said, why would I go and interview students? It takes so much time and energy and they don't show up on time. I said, okay, I can just write down, nobody will know. I can just write down a few of their responses. I have enough imagination. No way. People's imagination is far beyond what they can imagine, and this idea shows them. Okay, prime number, prompt number 2, different one. Why do you say 143 is prime? Because, once again, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 don't go into it. So, once again, correct answer. But justification is not something that I would like to see in a classroom. So, in strong development, we moved from a student given incorrect answer to an answer which is correct, but justification needs improvement. We also developed prompts where there is a student claim, but no justification. So, hey, imagine what could be a justification, write up your own diagnosis. And here 37 is indeed prime, so which is the number. 37 is indeed prime, but once again, justification is overkill. We don't need all this. We don't need to, for example, to check the divisibility of 37 by 2 and 4 and so on, and all these numbers to develop to conclude that this is a prime number. A little bit more prompts. Once again, why do you say that number 462 is divisible by 4? Because the sum of the digits is divisible by 4. For people who were not in mathematics classrooms for the past couple of years, this is the divisibility property for 3. When we want to know whether a number is divisible for 3, it is enough to look at the sum of the digits. For 4, we look at the divisibility of the number created by the last 2 digits. Okay, and once again, we changed it to because without explanation. And if you note, we also changed the number from 462 to 354. And this is because to allow for more imaginative answers, because many people look at the last digit. So we wanted to find something where the last digit is 4 and let our prospective teachers do their analysis. Okay, I say I will talk about the affordances of lesson plays for prospective teachers, and they engaged in this activity of creating a play. It is a preparation, as I said, for real teaching, but it allows to think and examine the answers, not thinking of your feet, not thinking on your feet. Develop time to think, consider your responses, and this is a privilege that we do not have in the real classroom situation, but maybe as a preparation, once we practice a lot of those, developing repertoire of possible approaches, then it will be easier to grab one of those when this real situation comes and one has to think of it. It provides an opportunity to explore erroneous perspectives, understand the origin of those perspectives, and help students overcome their erroneous perspectives, and whether those are incorrect answers or just incomplete, imperfect justifications. It is also an opportunity to examine personal response. How would you react? Maybe how your colleague will react. And once again, extend the repertoire of possible responses. And as I said already several times, an opportunity to imagine real teaching. And I already mentioned those, creating a repertoire of responses and general strategies that will be used in the future, and it is improvisation theater in lessons. Okay, for teacher educators, I already discussed and showed a few ways how I work with prospective teachers. And, oh, this is important. The underlying assumption that teachers write the best that they can. They do not write some comic. They do not write something that they will critique themselves. They write lesson play in which they imagine really good teaching, really good response. Because one can write a play which will be used as something for people to critique, or some humorous play. This is not an assignment. The assignment is create the best lesson that you can imagine. So with this assumption, we think that the moves what teacher does, what prospective teachers write about, reflect their personal views, reflect their personal imagination of teaching. So it allows teachers to move beyond lesson planning. For teacher educators, it provides an opportunity to highlight appropriate responses, or more appropriate than others, to direct further attention to learners. This is an important one, because usually prospective teachers are so much concerned with what they will do that they pay much less attention to what their students would or could do. So pay attention to learners' response. Don't think about yourself only. And doesn't make much sense to us, right? Opportunity to shift prospective teachers' thinking about preparation for instruction. That's all this about. And opportunity to enhance and inform personal design of methods. This is for teacher educators. Our methods classes, let's make them more interesting for ourselves. And once I started to use this lesson play as a task for prospective teachers, many of my colleagues joined. And some of you are teaching or will teach in the future prospective teachers. There are many advantages to this task. Try it. You will find it interesting. At least not as boring as grading. Okay, and there are of course several affordances for researchers. Once again, with the same assumption, the teachers create the best that they can. It provides a lens to examine teachers' conception of teaching and learning in what they call semi-action, and gives an insight to the moves that support mathematical discourse. And it also provides an opportunity to examine the role of imaginary interactions in developing alternate moves. And now, because there's some more time left, I would like to show a little bit more excerpts from actual plays created. So this, what I show now, is a response to this prompt. Why do we say that 462 is divisible by 4? It is because the sum of the digits is divisible by 4. And the teacher says, I think we are confusing our divisibility rules for 3 and 4. So just from here, you can learn a lot about the teacher views the classroom. First of all, her and students are together. We are confusing, not you, Johnny. And also, our divisibility rules. So discuss some kind of ownership. So if you are interested in this course, there's so much to analyze in terms of the language. And here the teacher writes the divisibility rules down on the whiteboard, and she reviews them. And I would like the class please to copy these rules in their math workbooks. We will need to review these rules before we become comfortable with them. Once again, teaching approach, summarize, put it somewhere. Some people suggested to make a poster in the classroom that you can always point somewhere on the wall to the correct rule. And so this is one of the possible teaching approaches. Now take a look and read this one, and I underlined a few things. Once again, a response to the same prompt, divisibility by 4. Do you want me to read it? I'll read it because some people don't see. We can discover why by looking over the rule of dividing by 4s. So here you can pay attention to the language that the teacher is using. And it is not a language that makes me happy, but without the lesson play, I don't have an opportunity to correct this language. Let's talk about the easiest rule for dividing by 4. I don't like to talk about divisibility rules, even though I mentioned it. I talk about the divisibility properties, just to avoid this rule-based mathematics. We went over it in class yesterday, but I know it's sometimes hard to remember if you feel confused. So I see here a teacher puts in his or her own view of mathematics. Mathematics is hard. It's hard to remember. And are you thinking about when we did dividing by 3s? Once again, pay attention to language. Dividing by 3s, not the divisibility property. And if the sum of the number adds up to a number divisible by 3, once again, look at the language, the sum of the number. We don't look at the sum of the number, we're talking mathematics about the sum of the digits. So many things to look at and discuss and to be concerned about in one small excerpt. And I was not choosing the worst ones. I was just choosing something that will give an idea of how rich it can be for discussion in a classroom and for research analysis. And the student says, I would only remember the rule for dividing 3s. I sort of forget stuff if it's too hard. Once again, you see this interplay of forgetting and hard. And once again, you feel confused and forget. The teacher suggests to write them down on a piece of paper. You can go back and review. And once again, the student says something you just get home and forget. So it is a long way home from the class. You are good in doing your mathematics tasks in the classroom, but on the way home, people forget. And this is a very nice description. And in my mind, it is also portrays the teacher's personal feelings with mathematical tasks. So let's look at one more. Here, the divisibility rule. If we want to decide that a large number is divisible by 4, it is enough to look at the number created by the last 2 digits. Once again, 7 trillions and 24 is divisible by 4 because the last 2 digits, the number created by the last 2 digits is divisible by 4. 24 is divisible by 4. But here we see uncommon, but somehow disturbing misinterpretation of this property. Because rather than thinking of the number created by the last 2 digits, here the teacher teaches the rule, you have to look only at the last 2 digits, but looks at the last 2 digits separately. The teacher says, the student discovers the rules, says, you look at the last 2 numbers. And their exemplification, you looked at the last 2 numbers. 354 is divisible by 4. So the student goes, okay, 4 is divisible by 4, 5 is not divisible by 4. And that is the reason for the conclusion about 354. As another example, there is a consideration of 384. So 4 is divisible by 4, 8 is divisible by 4. And therefore 384 is divisible by 4. So this is a misinterpretation of the rule, and this misinterpretation of the rule is a result of the use of inappropriate language, at least in my analysis. Because when the student teacher tells me, you look only at the last 2 digits, and I say, no, you don't look at the last 2 digits. You consider a number created by the last 2 digits. And they say that I'm just picky and I insist on things that are absolutely not important. But here, I have an opportunity to show that my insistence on appropriate language is important, because if you say you look on the last 2 digits, there is this kind of misinterpretation of looking at these last 2 digits separately. Once again, I wouldn't have an opportunity to uncover this inappropriate teacher's interpretation of the divisibility property without giving this teacher the opportunity to create a lesson. And once again, here I learned that it is a teacher when a student mistake, when the teacher agrees with the student's mistake. And I have many, many examples where in a play there is a student mistake which is praised. There is a student mistake and teacher doesn't care to correct it. Teacher says, wonderful, Johnny, I think you are learning. It is wonderful that you are paying attention. By the way, the praise is another something that was so much overwhelming in those lesson plays. I wasn't aware of it. And maybe it is very, very Canadian, that people are very nice. And they praise each other. And maybe it is one of the criticisms of my teaching, that I don't praise people as much as they want to be praised. But what I saw in those lesson plays, and I'm not sure I want a colleague to try similar tasks in the States and other countries to see how much of this praise is cultural, how much it is part of elementary teachers in Canada, or how much it is within the minds of elementary school teachers in general. But once again, this praise is, I saw something overwhelming. But here, the teacher agrees with the student and says the small numbers, ones and tens column. So she emphasizes that you look at the units digit and at the digit in the tens column, divisible by 4, then there is no point to checking into the hundreds column. Okay, so I had time to show you a few more excerpts. And, here are a few more. Not divisibility properties, not divisibility rules. There are divisibility tricks. There are so many neat math tricks for different things. I can show you. This is the teacher talking. She would like to show students some wonderful tricks. In this one, there is also reference to a trick. Want to see some awesome trick? Come to the carpet, give me a number, and I will tell you immediately. But here, the trick is used as a motivation for learning. The teacher knows immediately whether the number is divisible or not divisible. Students are invited to check it on their calculator. So this second one, I see it is much better, even though I don't like reference tricks. But here it is used as a motivation for learning. Or you want to know how I do this? Okay, once you're intrigued, I'll show you what is going on. Okay, so I will end with, once again, with the affordances of lesson play for researchers. I already mentioned what is written in all these bullets, but there is also another way, another affordance for researchers, and it is here. So far, we published 4 things related to lesson play. Okay, it is not only affordance, it is the reference. We published 4 things related to the idea of lesson play, and there are more to come. So it is another affordance for researchers.
Thank you, Rina. That's very, very interesting. I hope there's going to be a lot more lesson play and methods courses. It sounds less boring and more insight into the roots, which is really important. Are there questions? Okay, we'll start back there with Cheryl and then Susan.
So I see from your lesson plays that you sort of uncovered in your preschool teachers two things. One is their own misunderstanding of the mathematics itself. By their answers, you can tell that they really don't know. For example, why a number, when the last digits of a number are divisible by 4, that the number is. And the other thing is sort of this pedagogy, right, about how to correct a mistake when you do know the answer. So I'm wondering how in your methods classes you address these, and do you address them both, or how what you do?
I have to address them both. I try to skip over the mathematical part rather quickly, but I pay lots of attention to the language for mathematics. And the idea is the idea of pedagogy. The idea of those developing lesson plays was to imagine teaching and imagine pedagogical responses. This was our goal. The fact that we get to see students, prospective teachers' personal misconceptions, it is maybe for researchers added benefit, for a teacher it is added disturbance. But as a teacher, there's definitely a need to address those. If there are not something extensive, if it appears only in 1 or 2 places in the class, maybe there's an opportunity to address it privately and not bring to the discussion of the whole. And sometimes there's an opportunity to extend their personal or confirm their personal mathematical knowledge. So we do what we can. It's not easy.
Susan and then Rina.
So I think your work is fascinating. It's really wonderful.
Thank you.
I've been trying to imagine lesson play in action. I've thought about doing similar sorts of things. I study child development, and I use a lot of situations where I try to put students in roles responding to issues. But as I'm looking at the text, and you're talking about the language that students are using, I'm wondering if you've ever actually been able to have the students act out their plays after they've written them. And I'm wondering if in the process of going through the lesson play, if students themselves might recognize
Yes and no. Not recently. As I said, I started with enacting, and it didn't give opportunity to participate to many students, so we switched to writing. And the short answer is no. I haven't asked them to enact what they wrote.
It would be interesting to see how the students.
For this, there is an opportunity when we share written work or share the chosen excerpts of written work that I bring to discussion, not actual enacting. Because I don't have that much time, and I'll think about it maybe next time.
Okay. Ravid and Darian. I don't. No.
So I really like this. It's also very fascinating. I work with pre-service teachers, and I'm sort of struggling around the
In mathematics?
No, science, secondary science biology. This notion of micro teaching. One of the problems that I've found is that they have a hard time coming up with reasonable kid talk. So oftentimes they don't necessarily hold similar kind of misconceptions as what children would hold. So they sometimes have a hard time playing the students. And I'm interested in whether you saw any interesting patterns or anything interesting about the way the teachers in their plays wrote the student responses, because they had to do that too. I mean, they wrote the teacher responses, but then they kind of continued the conversation, right? If you saw anything interesting about the way they thought students were going, what kinds of things they thought students were going to say.
Yes, and it worked both ways. I don't have excerpts here, but I have I don't have excerpts here, but yes, in some places they played very nicely the role of the student, where a student says something inappropriate or imprecise, and the teacher helps the student develop the language. Or the teacher reaction is in a different language and how they negotiate meaning. I saw this. I also saw where the teacher puts in student words something that they have just read on the internet, or some quote from the book, and they put it in the words of student character, which would be absolutely inappropriate for a child to say something like that. So it goes all the possible examples. But once again, I'm working with those lesson plays for the past 7 years maybe. So we saw a lot.
Two questions. The first one is, what's the difference between this and vignette? Because I've seen more famous situations, how we respond to it. So, and that's a longer history.
Yes, thank you very much for this question. This is a situation how you would respond to it. It is very, very different from considering a play. Because I would bring a situation to the class and I would say, okay, I'm a student, I'm telling you this, I'm a student, I'm telling you this, please talk to me as the teacher would talk to a student, and people say, I would tell him, I would show her. No, don't tell me what you would tell him or what you would show her. Show me, tell me. And my students had real difficulty doing this. They could say what they would do. They could describe how somebody may approach the situation, but actually approaching the situation, surprisingly or not surprisingly, there was a huge difference. So that's how I see the difference in actually writing the script versus saying how you would respond to this situation or that situation.
The second question is to do with, I don't think it's compromised. Well, don't get me wrong, I'm not in education, so I'm not sure I know what I'm talking about. But I don't think they're the same, because this is form of an assessment, whereas a lesson plan is it's like you're a blueprint when you actually look at the class. So I'm not sure whether I could use lesson play for me to prepare to teach a certain material, unless I've already provided enough information about what they know and what they do not know. And I could do that. But if I were to teach fraction instruction today, and then how should I plan for that lesson if I were to actually teach that unit of material?
So I'm not sure I get the question.
Well, I think that from what I can see, it looks like lesson plays a good way of assessing what the teachers know. But whether or not they could use that as bring to the class when they're about to teach a certain material, I wasn't sure whether that's as applicable. In the sense that, of course, you can also give them prompt. Make sure that you make your lesson plan include this kind of things to expect. You would expect students who would do that. How would you plan? How would you write a lesson plan for that? So I think there's two different things.
Yes and no. There are definitely two different things, and I'm not advocating for trashing lesson plans. I'm advocating for extending the preparation for teaching to this kind of activity, where people have an opportunity to examine their reaction to students' different approaches to student errors. And maybe their learning repertoire of things that, once again, doesn't have room to present this repertoire in the lesson plan. For example, if a student provides an incorrect answer, one very, very common response of an experienced teacher is to ask the student to clarify. How did you get it? Why are you saying what you're saying? This is not the initial response that I'm getting from prospective teachers. Their immediate reaction is to correct. And when they have been reached in prior courses, general education courses, not to correct the student immediately. So when they get to my methods course, they already know that they are not supposed to tell the child there is a mistake. So the usual reaction would be Oh, nice try, Johnny. Does somebody else have a different answer? And then there is the correct answer comes from another student. And then there's grades. So there's once again one approach that I saw very, very frequently in the plays, and it provides an opportunity to work on it. But without the play, the situation is less vivid and less inviting a response.
Okay, so Marjorie and then Drew.
Well, first, thank you. This work is fascinating on so many levels. A question is, and you've been working on this with your students for several years now. I'm wondering how challenging is it to get your students to engage in doing this kind of activity? And I guess you made some evolution in your strategies for engaging your students in doing this. But maybe you could just tell us a little bit more about, like, if I wanted to go into my methods class and start using this, how could I get my students to maybe buy into this a little bit?
Oh, you just assign it and you say it is for marks. But more seriously, we try to do it gradually. We ask them to write something rather short, 2 pages in the very beginning of the class. And then we bring it up for discussion, so they know more what to expect. And then we have them something to write in the middle of the course, so they learn a little bit more. And also towards the end of the course, when it is not only for learning, but also for assessment, because the first trial is not for assessment, it is just to get familiar with the strategy and to get familiar with the expectation. So for the part of the task which is for an assessment, because unfortunately I have to mark them and I'm not allowed to give all A's, which I would like to do, or I would like to give complete and incomplete, then my strategy is to give them a choice, of prompts, so they can work, still working with the prompts that we created based on our experience and based on research, but they have a choice of a prompt what they are more familiar with. So they choose something where they're more confident with mathematics that lets them expose their learning of pedagogy and their pedagogical inclinations, considerations, and so on. So gradually, slowly. TLC.
TLC. Drew?
Yeah, thank you. This really is provocative. So have you, to what extent have you thought about providing sort of start seeding this with dialogue, say, and then having the student teacher take the dialogue from there? So you've sort of laid out sort of what the student responses are, because in some of these examples, you're really getting at just the teacher's explanation. There's not a whole lot of student thinking that they can react to, other than I'm not sure of something. And it's just an explanation. But you could imagine, for example, having a richer discussion where some of these important understandings or misunderstandings are revealed, and then the teacher then says, okay, now what do I do with that? And start the play from there. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is, how do you look at sort of the effectiveness of this whole process in terms of the outcomes for these students?
Informally.
Okay.
What you discussed is a different task. It is definitely a possibility. Thank you very much. I will try it. And with respect to effectiveness, I don't have any formal assessment. I don't know how those teachers behave when they go to their classroom. I'm not as good as our wonderful colleague who continue to do longitudinal research for many years and follow up those students and see whether it had any effect on their real teaching. Sorry, I don't know. What I do know is when they go from my course to their practicum, informally I learned with very positive comments from them. Oh, I thought that you were making it up, this mistake. But it actually happened to some students in my class. So in some places, when the prompts, in some places the prompt matched what they experienced. And of course there were many, many different other experiences. But informally we get positive comments. or maybe people who do not have positive comments don't come back to us. It is not verified research.
So let's say thank you very much.